Enter the crib. Your Strike Back sit rep starts in 3, 2, 1. Wait, do we go on 0?
All right, Meebers, welcome back to the Sit Rep. We are here to talk about episode 8. I am fairly certain we are going to get through this entire episode without crying. Even both our interviews, it'll be amazing. I'm sure it will be welcome for all of you. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Deb.
And there are spoilers ahead, as always. Wow, episode 8. This one was a fucking mind-blowing episode.
Definitely an episode 8. Did not disappoint.
Yeah. So what did you think overall about the episode?
I thought it was fantastic. Absolutely. I mean, I always really look forward to the episode 8 because it usually is a mind-blowing episode and kind of wraps everything, usually lets us know what's really going on, and this absolutely did not disappoint. I mean, it disappointed because of what the reveals were.
Right.
But the episode itself was just packed with information and action and WTFs. And it's kind of, whoa, kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It was like, there were some, because there were like a bazillion what the fuck moments and reveals and shit, like packed into this episode. Some I felt like we've seen sort of teases of that you kind of, Whitehall's at it again, no big fucking surprise. Even though we were hoping, because James and Coltrane have this history, but okay, like, you need to go back and watch, because like, Mahir's like CIA, and just like all of this stuff is going on, and it's just crazy. It was a lot of notes that are just capital letters.
Lots of stars, like this is
important.
Oh, no, it's important.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think, I'm like, okay, if I just look at the first page, I have fuck, holy shit, oh my god, and then fuck. Just in the, like, in the bottom of my notes, because I just was like, I need to remember that this was, like, mind-blowing. Yeah.
In minute 6, there was another mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It was like every minute was
it was incredible. So I want to start off really quick, just say a hats off to Jack Lothian, because if you listened to our preseason, you heard him talk about having that guy teasing me a lot, and Deb some, although she's not fangirly over Joe Taslim.
Hottie McHottie Pants.
Hottie McHottie Pants. From Warrior, which is the lead of the raid, and like how we had mentioned and wish he could come on Strike Back, and so we thought he was teasing us about that, and he was, except being Jack Lothian, he is layers. And if you notice, the other guy from the raid was in this, and I just like died laughing when I saw him, and I was like, Jack sort of told the truth. It's like a first, so.
Well, he told the truth the way Jack tells the truth. I'm gonna give you this little grain, but then I'm gonna totally twist it.
And I just like picture Jack sitting there as he was telling us about the guy from the raid, and the little smirk on his face has suddenly new meaning.
So instead of Joe Taslim, who was the goodie in the raid, we got Yayan Ruyan, who was the baddie in the raid.
The baddie.
So, so good.
Yeah.
So good.
So that was amazing. Okay, so I think we need to do this again out of order and just go straight to what the fuck moment. Because
which one?
That feels like what most of this episode was.
Exactly. It was just one big WTF. I don't know. I mean, is it that we finally got the full story on Spencer, or is it, Zayef doing just playing them with the whole forgiveness thing?
Oh.
I mean, there were so many, or Chetri, oh my God, Chetri, no, no, or Demachi being a Russian agent.
Or killing her own son.
What? Yes, that was my big one. It was like, I think because it was just the most, like, just primal level betrayal that, I mean, it was just so disturbing. Like, oh my God, she killed her own son.
Yeah.
I loved you.
Pretty Lark.
Yeah, he was good. I really, Maxim Baldry, it was very good.
Yeah.
Even as he's, lying there dead, his last look is right at her with, with a what the fuck look on his face. So.
Yeah, that was, God. This is so much. Mine was the reveal of her as a Russian agent. I did not see that coming at all. There was, to me, like, I know the guy at the plane graded the comment about, like, how did you learn this? But I'm just like, she's in the fucking mafia. Like, of course she learned this. And the stuff with the British, we're like, okay, so Zayev has this connection to the British. Although Mahir being, like, CIA and MI6 was pretty mind-blowing. But still, like, okay. And then when they're like, and she's Russian, I was like, what? Like, oh, holy shit, what the fuck? Like, that gets all the expletives.
It was great. It's like, I just pictured Jack with like a little chart of when do I make the reveal, the levels of what the fuck in this episode.
Yeah, right.
Okay, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. Oh, let's put this last one in. Like, oh my God, Jack.
And that
what an
is a
episode 8.
big one.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, I just can't. Yeah, I did not see that coming at all. And I got to ask you, because you always pick up, like, with last year with Alec and stuff, you pick up on stuff faster than I do, because I just, like, blind myself, and I'm like, emotions! And you're like, smart viewer! So, did you suspect that she was Russian?
No. Jack definitely got me with that one. That just... And yet, there were clues along the way. She just knew too much. You could keep telling yourself there were other reasons, but I mean, she just really knew too much. Once it's revealed, you're like, oh yeah. Good God. I mean, wow. This episode just was wow.
Amazing. Yeah. Incredible.
White.
Wow. Okay. So, big what the fucks. All right. So, what was your fight of the night then?
It's really funny. You look back on the episode and you're like, were there any fights? Because there's so much. It's got to be that whole. And there were several great fights in it. But if we're going to just go with, actual fights and attacks and stuff, it has that whole attack on them from the CIA, when the drone when Chetri figures it out and the drone hit and it just goes on. And then, Wyatt in the train area, Ruyan, and I don't even remember what his name is actually, fighting off the mercs, and even Spencer realizing, oh my God, I'm gonna get hit in this too.
Right. Yeah.
And I did love the whole, when it came down to having to fight off the mercs and he's got the gut shot and stuff, that complete throwback to the original Strike Back and how that ended with, the good guy baddie sacrificing himself to save the team with a grenade. I mean, that was a throwback to the original Strike Back.
I didn't catch that, but okay.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, that's amazing. That's it. That's all I got. Yeah, to me, the same thing. I mean, that was great. Although I did love all the stuff on the ship was really cool.
Oh,
I think they did that was really neat. But, yeah, I think Mad Dog, I don't know, I only know him by his name in the raid, fighting Wyatt. Because, I mean, we know, I don't remember who it was, somebody who follows the sit rep, and I'm so sorry because somebody had asked, and they tagged us, and they asked who would win in a fight, Wyatt versus Novan. And my pick is Novan, because she is, like, phenomenal. Wyatt is really good at what he does, but hand-to-hand is just not his forte. And we saw that again. I mean, he is almost going down and has to be sort of saved. So anyways, I just love seeing Wyatt get beat up. No, that's terrible. Yeah. It just was a great shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, his final words to him, I forget exactly what it was, but his last words were, "I have a team."
Right.
Which throw back to their first season, season 6 with, I don't need a team. So that was really sweet, I thought. Sweet.
Yeah.
Not sweet.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah, but it is like it shows a growth in Wyatt for depending on them. I mean, they're all sort of hanging by the strings anyways, but he knows that Nova and Coltrane and Cheddar's to a degree have his back still. So yeah. Okay. Favorite emotional moment?
Oh man, that's a tough one in this episode because there actually are a lot of emotional moments. Each character is kind of had their moment. Coltrane realizing when Spencer shows up, to get them before the drone strikes, and Coltrane confronting him, man, and him just trying to hold it together when he realizes how deeply they've been betrayed. The whole Zayef's speech about forgiveness running through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And do you trust him? Is he just playing them? Because he's a master manipulator.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think at the end when he's using that as now do you forgive me, and does that whole speech about Mac and forgiveness and now do you forgive me? I mean, he wants that bullet, and it's again something that's been referenced in this show before, redemption in a bullet.
Yeah.
And Zayef's chasing that bullet in that scene, and he's just masterfully doing it. And I think part of him was sincere and, putting it out there that that's the only way this ever ends. And, you people never learn. And just there was so much in his sort of final moments where he's just putting the truth out there. It's like, here it is. Here's what it always comes down to. Are you going to get your vengeance? Are you going to, carry out the vendetta, or are you going to forgive me? And we saw what happened. No, bullet to the head. And that, it's that whole, the title of this is Vendetta, but the underlying thing in this entire season is forgiveness. And once again, we went with violence instead of forgiveness, vengeance instead of, So I think, I'm going to go with that. All the emotions wrapped up in that. And then the aftermath of killing Zayef, that scene with Coltrane being so consumed with it, and Novin and Wyatt having to sort of bring him down and reconnect him.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, for me, it's Cheddar's, because Verada this episode was so phenomenal. This was never supposed to be her. She was there for one mission. She was the rule follower, the one who pushed Coltrane on following the rules. I remember that magic moment last season where he looked like he was almost going to kill her because she was going to report him, and she feels so betrayed.
Mm-hmm. Again.
And betrays them, and then betrays them again. And she's trying to do what's right. And God, I mean, I think that was surprising. Maybe shouldn't have been, because she's not one of them. She's not callous in a way that they are. And so, I think that was.
And she's so desperately grasping for a return to normalcy, a return to the way things are supposed to be. And, there's a chain of command. He's our superior. Who did we just hear that? There's a chain of command from, and now, oh God, Verada's so good this season. I mean, she was great last season, but man, she is just
stepped it up big time.
Wow.
God, does she have like the most magically emotional eyes?
Yeah.
Just
so good.
Yeah.
She's just one of those one of those actresses who just comes alive in front of the camera. You know, they're just, some people, as soon as that camera turns on, it's like they're just magic. And she is one of those actresses that it just, boom, wow.
Yeah, incredible.
Really good.
Which I think leads us straight into predictions. Well, I mean, we know Section 20 has never been kind to the computer guy. Jack. Jack promised. I'm so overwhelmed with like fear for her, but that I can't even like think straight. That he said they'd never kill Cheddars.
We're counting on you, Jack.
Yeah. I hope not, because she's she's just trying to do the right thing, and I think she's screwing the team twice in one episode, but it's for what she feels is a good reason. I guess but of course that's the thing with every baddie in Strike Back, or you're doing what you do where you think it's a good reason. Not that she's a baddie, but like she does something and to other people the team is the baddie because they do something that they feel like is for the right reason, and I hope that she doesn't pay the ultimate price for this, or that they don't. I don't know. I guess I don't have a prediction other than a plea. Please don't kill Cheddars.
Yeah, because it's not looking good. And it's just, yeah. I mean, how are they going to get out of this? All of them are blacklisted. The only thing that can save them now is that
thing that she's taken.
Is that intel. Yeah. And who's she going to turn it into? I mean,
the people who just set her up.
Yeah. There's just nowhere for them to turn. The only person who knew the truth I guess the CIA woman knows the truth because, the Americans are in on this whole horrible experiment. But, I mean, she just tried to completely wipe them out. So
yes, she doesn't seem like the helpful type. All I know is if there's any other nerds out there, the classic rule in Dungeons and Dragons is you don't split the party up because that's when people die.
Right.
And Cheddar's just split the party up. So somebody, it's not good. So, oh my God, we forgot to tell you guys who's on this week. So we're going to call that it for episode 8. Then coming up, oh wait, you didn't do your predictions, did you? Sorry. Deb's going to do her predictions.
Pretty much. I predict we're going to cry. Pain. I predict next week is going to be freaking amazing because, wow, what an episode 8. And you can only raise the bar even higher. This
episode it blew our mind so much that we forgot our normal intro. Coming up, your Jack's Facts. Hear from Dan MacPherson, and then we have another 2 phenomenal interviews for you. We have Nuala O'Leery, who was the series producer for this year. You've heard her name from a lot of people for the last 2 years, so we were really excited to talk to her. And one of your favorite interviews from last year was Fraser MacDonald, the second AD, and he is back to talk about everything. So we are really excited. You will enjoy both of those.
We've got Overwatch. Jack's Facts coming in.
Okay, welcome back, Meebers. We are here with some awesome behind-the-scenes Jack's Facts for episode 8. And I think we're calling this the poor old Jack's Facts. Poor old Lorik Damachi. If only he just kept his mouth closed and respected his mother a bit more. It's a fond farewell to actor Maxim Baldry, who can be seen next on our screens in the forthcoming adaptation of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, which I'm excited about. I hope it's good.
Yeah.
I hope it's better than The Hobbit. All right. Poor old Sir James Spencer, and all thanks to actor John Mitchie for coming in as the creator of Section 20. John is a big name in Scotland, having played Detective Inspector Ross on the popular hard-boiled crime show Taggart for 12 years. Taggart was famous for the following exchange. Please say in your best Scottish accent. Why the fuck, Jack? I'm not an actor. God. Okay. No, I can't. There's been a nope. That's not right. I'm like, the only accent I could do is like Texas. There's been a nope. That's still not Texas either. I'm stuck. I can't. Ooh, laddie. It's about the Scottish as I get. Okay. There's been a murder at Fir Hill. Sorry, Jack, I'm letting you down. There's a murder at Fir Hill every fortnight. If any American can figure out that joke without Googling it, you have my undying love and respect. That is not a joke for me. Sorry.
Oops, sorry. Poor old Kabul. That's the name of the private military contractor that Yayan Ruhian was playing. Yayan is, of course, known for the Raid films, as well as John Wick 3 and Star Wars The Force Awakens. It was a tricky thing to schedule him into the show, and we managed to just about pull it off, even if it meant a bit of script reshuffling along the way. He was a total star and lovely person to have on set, and made one of the tougher days of filming a lot easier. Yeah, he's a badass, man.
Oh, yeah. Poor old Zayef. Sure, he killed Mac, but he had a lot of baggage to deal with, not to mention having to wear that big beard in an incredibly hot Croatian summer. Alex Sekaranu did a wonderful job, and if you've not seen his award-winning performance in God's Own Country, then we highly recommend it. Oh, I haven't seen God's Own Country. I'm going to have to go watch that.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Okay. Poor old Chetri. She was only meant to join the team to help them out on one mission, and now she finds herself blacklisted, disavowed, and on the run. Oh, God. I'm sure it will work out just fine, though.
God, that's red flags.
Promise, Jack, you promised.
Oh, that's some big red flags.
Oh, man.
All right, that's it for Jack's Facts. Next up, Wyatt's fault.
We're not at Xville. Stay with us at the crib.
Okay, we are back to discuss all the things that were wrong, all the things Wyatt did wrong in episode 8. How mean was Wyatt to Cheddars in this episode? And what the heck? I mean, then Cheddars, I think she felt so bad that she just said, screw you guys, I'm turning us all in.
Why? Like Cheddars? Like, what the heck? Like, already she gave Zarkova the heads up about that kill order. And you've this, Jack's kind of planted these seeds throughout the season of Cheddar's moral sort of decisions that she's going to battle with throughout the season. Wyatt thinks his way is always the right way, even with his kind of zen, cynical, worldly, kind of nihilistic faith that he has.
Mr.
Which,
Sunshine.
Okay.
Like that's Wyatt. That's what goes around in Wyatt's head, He's still, it's still like there's the unwritten rules of right and wrong. And like, fuck, Cheddars, what did you do that for? Like, as if the situation isn't tough enough as it is. So, look, Wyatt's fault, what are you talking about? Like, which part particularly are you going to blame Wyatt for in here? Because I reckon he was pretty good. I mean, yes, we had to outrun some. How good were those explosions, by the way? But
he was pretty
I don't think
snippy
anything
with
was
her.
Wyatt's fault.
No,
I don't
okay.
think anything was Wyatt's fault this time. I actually just racked my brain. I think it's Chetri's fault.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And look, maybe she gets what she deserves.
Oh, God.
Which is a stern look from what you're talking about.
We're not at Xville. Stay with us at the crib.
Welcome back, Meebers. We are really excited today because we have a guest who has been with our new team, quote unquote, of Strike Back since the series rebooted. And she's gone from producer to series producer this year. And she's really outside of Jack, she's our first producer that we've ever had on. So, Nuala O'Leary, can you tell us what the heck does a producer do?
I guess you'd say a producer is a sort of problem solver, like a line manager in sort of simplistic terms. I think there's different kinds of producers. You get producers that concentrate a lot on financial aspects of production, and then you get creative producers. And I think I'm certainly more a creative producer. And that what that entails is on a show like Strike Back, I'm, from the moment that they say we're going and that we've got a new season, I will be in the room with Jack, storylining, putting together names for other writers that would, potentially come and write alongside Jack. Didn't always happen because Jack is so good at it. But, and then we would go from the writer's room. I put together the script team. So they're the sort of editorial staff that will basically be across the scripts and help Jack with literally just getting the scripts out there so that we can distribute them to the crew. And so very early on in prep, a producer is the person that's responsible for crewing up, finding all your HODs. On season 6, when I started, there were a couple of HODs coming back, to the show that had done it before. Obviously, director like MJ and DPs like JP Gossart and Mike Spragg all came back from the previous Scott and Stonebridge incarnation. So I was happy to sort of welcome them back. And then there were new people that we were sort of bringing into the fold. And, that happens every season. So sometimes HODs don't come back. I think what's great about Strike Back is pretty much all of our HODs did from sort of season to season, because I think that they love the show. So that made my job a bit easier in prep, because it would just be about getting those guys and gals dates down and making sure that they knew where we were going and all of that sort of stuff. And so, while I'm doing that, all that time, we're Jack's writing scripts and we're prepping, and we're trying to get as many scripts written basically by the time we start shooting. Because then sort of once you're shooting, you are also writing at the same time, and everything then starts to get compressed. And then recce's obviously are really important another wonderful thing about Strike Back is, my passport used to be blank. And then I started shooting Strike Back, and it's taken me to some of the most amazing places in the world. And we will, we'd obviously go ahead of time and start to see what infrastructure was there. We have a fixing company, which is usually the local production company that will be our go-to people in that country that we're shooting at. In season 6, we obviously shot Jordan and Budapest, and they were returning to Budapest, which was a place where the Scott and Stonebridge years had also filmed a lot. So there was, there were people that knew the show there, and we were sort of inheriting them, which was great. It was certainly great for me as a new producer on that series, was knowing we were going somewhere where there were people that knew how to do the show, And then season 7, Malaysia was a whole new ball game. We'd never, I think, tried anywhere as exotic and far away as that. So actually, no, that's a lie. They did go to Thailand, didn't they, for a bit? But the whole season out in Malaysia was another big leap for the show. So yeah, so we would go out, we would recce. It's sort of back and forth, and then you all, once everything sort of looks like it's ready to go and greenlit, you all move out there into a big sort of production hub, and you do your last sort of 8 to 10 weeks of prep out there on the ground, and that is day to day. That is constantly checking in on budget. That's all making sure the HODs have got what they need, facilities. They're starting to crew up, obviously, get the local crew together. You're firefighting. There's all countries you go to come with new challenges or just different ways of doing things. So you're sort of trying to integrate what the show needs into different structures. And that's the same for when we went to Croatia this year. There's certain things that you think will be difficult that you learned from the previous season. You're like, okay, well, definitely we're going to do that better this time. And then that's not the problem. There's something else that's completely, more challenging. So yeah, during that process of, like I say, we're still writing and we're prepping those early episodes, the sort of eps 1 and 2, which are often tried to be sort of big and ambitious, hit the ground running. So as a hands-on producer, so what I've always produced the first and second eps of all the seasons. So that just means, again, going out on local recce's, sourcing all the locations, banking those locations, because if they're not quite right for block 1, they're going to be right for something down the line. Yeah, and then then you get closer and closer to shooting, and usually about 2 weeks out, you're starting to get itchy feet and want to just start shooting and blowing things up, to be honest. So and then block 1 kicks off, and from there on in, it's sort of pretty much 24 weeks of non-stop. And so I think producing, because I deviated, sorry, producing is sort of juggling all of those. It's juggling the relationships of the crew that you've got and making sure everybody's communicating, also trying to be a good communicator yourself. And then the added element of welcoming a cast back either for the first time or again, and trying to make sure that they're getting what they need. Again, new countries, new challenges. There is a sort of structure that is Strike Back, but it will never quite be the same, every time that you do it. Yeah, and then you start shooting, and then that comes with day-to-day challenges and firefights. And so the only thing I think a producer can do is try to be as prepared as possible for anything that might happen. But of course, you'll never be quite prepared. There'll always be something that screws you on the day. But that is the wonderful thing of Strike Back, I think, as well, as how challenging it is as a show and how fast moving it is and how much we shoot each day. Just what we managed to pull off. And I look at us in comparison to other shows, and I'm always pleasantly surprised, I think, and sort of proud of what we do.
And well, you should be. I mean, it's really amazing what is produced. It really is, feature film quality on our TV screens, and we are really going to miss that because it's so unique.
Me too. I mean, I was thinking the other day, because obviously, the producer's role continues after you've finished shooting as well. You take all the material back. You're obviously editing at the same time as you're shooting. So everything starts to ramp up sort of about midway into blocks 3. So episodes 5 and 6, you'll start to be getting ADR for episodes 1 and 2. And so you're concurrently doing post as well as prep as well as shoot. So you're constantly having to sort of change your brain so that you can try and objectively look at cuts and make sure, okay, is that working? Signing off those so that post can start to get moving with the grade and everything. But I always love returning back to London after the shoot and sort of my first sound mix, sitting there and watching eps 1 and 2 come together and sort of seeing everything in one place, all the VFX, all the grade, all the music, and it's it makes the stress of everything worth it. Yeah.
So I'm intrigued because we talked to Dan for episode 7, and he mentioned one of the things that was both very difficult and kind of pushed them to a new level was doing 2 blocks in a row, block 3 and 4, where you had lots of new people, new directors, new DOPs, like just lots of new people involved. And he said that it was very different for them being like, okay, so now the cast and then sort of like you are like the only people who've been there the whole time and having to take the lead. And I'm wondering if you can talk about sort of the difference between this season and previous seasons and how you sort of manage when you have that. And I guess the other thing is, I know every series is going to be different, but what makes Strike Back more difficult for new people?
Ooh,
sorry, that
good
was
question.
complex.
I mean, it's a great question. I think Dan's right. It is the cast are one of the biggest constants on the show because they turn up every day to set, and they're faced with new directors, new DPs, and that is a challenge because often you want to have rehearsal time and you want to have face-to-face time, and it's when the juggernaut is sort of on the move and when Strike Back is like that, because their time is so divvied up with rehearsals and going training just to keep in shape, and they must feel quite schizophrenic, I suspect. And so faced with new people that don't know the show, I think it's always a sort of there's a moment when it's like, oh, okay, I've got to, this is quite a big thing to do. It's, we shoot a hell of a lot in a day. We usually do sort of 10-hour continuous days, which means we have our lunch on the run. And, in those cameras, we shoot 2 cameras in main unit and 2 cameras in second unit, and they are rolling all the time. And we're doing big action sequences potentially on both units. So, crew are sort of spread across, and certainly on a block like block 4 with eps 7 and 8, with eps 9 and 10 looming and all the ambition that they have, and especially with it being the last couple of eps, this season, my time, especially in Croatia, was sort of spent with Jack getting the scripts up to shape. And so the cast are left with sometimes maintaining that sort of that constant on set. But I think they're always very welcoming to all the new people that come on board, and they often help them sort of understand what Strike Back is. There is a Strike Back way of doing things. There is gunfights that are a Strike Back gunfight. You don't sort of, there's ways of shooting them, and I think the cast kind of know that intrinsically as well. They'll sort of know when we're getting it and when we're not sometimes. Yeah, I mean, if I could have cloned myself this season, I would have, because I love being on set. That's probably one of my favorite things. But you're sort of, especially as a series producer, you're pulled between being in two places at once. So, but I always think people do get there with Strike Back. I think eps 7 and 8, even though it probably was the block that had the most new people on it, I think it's still a very, strong couple of episodes, and very, very Strike Back. So, it is always a challenge. And I think it's not a simple, there's plenty of other shows that I think you can probably walk into, and you shoot, 4 or 5 pages a day of sort of chat. But even our sort of chat, our crib scenes, that can be sometimes 6 or 7 pages. There's a real art to get to pulling those off, and especially with the energy that Strike Back has, keeping the camera moving, making sure all the actors get their opportunity to sort of shine in those scenes. And it's I think in terms of getting people back as well, it's so busy in the TV industry at the moment. Well, it was.
Not at the moment.
Everything's shut down. But sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes you want, there's people that you want to bring back, but you can't because they're on other shows. But I think we always have an ambition of bringing in great people, and I think we managed to pull that off.
Yeah, I think so, and I agree with the 7 and 8 being phenomenal. 8, I think, is the most. We do like your what the fuck moment, and Deb and I were talking, and I was like, I have like half a page of notes where everything's just in capital letters, which is like, as I'm taking the notes, like, and I was like, everything is, I don't understand, like, there's like, everything in it is just chock full of
it. When because I see every episode sort of 20, 30 times by the end, and it's tricky sometimes to sort of take a step back from them, but I think now that I've had a little bit of time, I think 8 is probably the episode that most echoes those early chats that Jack and I had about wanting to really strip the team back this season, really look internally at what it is to be Section 20 in this day and age, and the sort of moral decisions they have to make as soldiers, and and the orders that they get and all that kind of thing. And so in terms of the story, we come off the back of episode 6, that is a very unique episode for Strike Back, and something that we'd never done
really
before.
Strip the team back there.
So we find the team on mission, but it's not just the external mission that we're sort of watching the team deal with. It's the grief and the rage. And Jack and I talked a lot about the fact that they're still soldiers, and that they don't strike us as people that would constantly be sort of breaking down and spilling their emotional guts, in a sense. So 8 is that sort of culmination, I think, of the pressure being really on them externally, with Spencer and with the Americans. But then they get their bad guy, and there he is in front of them, and they get an opportunity. And what do they do with that, and how do they deal with the grief? And so I think by the end, it's a very emotionally charged episode, and really we see them strip back in that way that I sort of imagined initially when we were sitting in the writer's room. And then in a wonderful Jack Lothian way, you get the wrinkle that sort of sets up eps 9 and 10, and where we're going to go from there, which I can say is really, really fun. So.
Oh, heck yeah. As you've been talking, there's like 8 million questions running through my brain, and how to throw them all out there. First, I'd love to, you talk about, well, you're with Jack and you're working on scripts, and I'd love to hear more about what that is actually like, because obviously Jack has an idea of where he wants all this to go, and then I'm guessing that you're there because you have to operationalize all this. So how do you work as a team to do that? And then episode 8, we're always excited for episode 8 because they're always the episode that sort of not only brings a whole bunch of stuff together, but then opens up a new can of worms in terms of how it's all going to end. And this episode 8 did not let us down. It had some huge reveals that I don't know why we didn't see that coming, because it's always fucking Whitehall. But,
yeah.
So I don't know. Let's go back to the how you work with Jack to write the scripts and operationalize the scripts, and then maybe we can follow up on fucking Whitehall.
I love working with Jack. He's brilliant, and it's he makes me laugh, and I think that's always a good start. So we sit in a room, and he's got a very clear idea, I think, of where he's headed. But 42 minutes is a long time it's a lot of time to fill, and obviously the scripts have to be a bit longer than that because once we've edited them down. So we're sort of always hitting around the 49 to 50 sort of page mark, and that gives us a good sense that we've got enough for an ep. So yes, there's a lot to fill, and I think we've always had back when we're storylining, we sort of put a sort of mini Bible together where we've got some amazing research. And then we throw down ideas for sequences that we would like to see, sequences that we've never done, or twists on sequences that maybe we've done before. Obviously, there's a staple of fights and stuff like that. But what about a fight in a meat locker? What about a fight in a bathroom? A fight, there's multiple things that we sort of want to weave in, and often it will be informed by locations as well. So what will be happening is the locations team will be giving us packs and packs of locations, and Jack and I will sort of sit there and be like, well, this looks cool. This could be used for something, or this for something else. But ultimately, we sit in a room and we've got a whiteboard, and we sort of try to plot out the key moments that we want across a block. And like I say, Jack will have a very good idea of it, and it's just sort of putting meat onto bones. And I try and be useful and come up with the odd suggestion across the season that sticks. Or, and certainly when Jack writes a script, I'll read them, obviously, and then feedback, what's working, what's not, what I think can be changed. And he's very fast. And often the great thing about Jack is his first drafts are very strong. So it's really sort of then just molding them into something that, like you say, is shootable. And so where that comes in is I'm constantly talking to production, to the other people in production, that's sort of locations department and just physical production, to talk about what our limitations are on that block. There is a pot of money that we need to juggle across the entire season. And selfishly, if I want to save a bit of it for episodes 9 and 10, I might sort of try to move. There was at one point on Block 4 we were going to go away for a week, but I think it became clear to us that we would need that time for later on in the season. So I'm juggling those things. And then in terms of expectations with Jack, he's very good at knowing when I'm sort of saying, oh, that's going to be difficult. And it's like, okay, is it going to be difficult, but we're going to be able to do it? Or actually, I think we need to rethink this. And 9 times out of 10, we will find a way to do something. The tanker, for example, we were talking about that from Block 1. I've always wanted to flip a tanker, like an articulated lorry. Ever since I saw Final Destination, as a kid, it was just I want to do that. And so very early on, I was talking to Adam Howarth, our SFX guy, about how we would go about doing that, what kind of vehicle we would need. And, I was saying to Jack, we've got to find a place for this if we can pull it off. And then over the course of looking into it, you sort of start to realize, okay, we're not going to be able to afford a 7-tonner or whatever it is, but we can afford something a little bit smaller. And also with the fact that we were having to build the petrol station, because we strangely couldn't find a petrol station we could blow up. Why? But so you start to go, okay, well, we've got a pot of cash. Half of it can go on the tanker and half of it can go on this. And we managed to realize that stunt. And I think rarely this season did I have to sit down with Jack and sort of say that this is just going to be one step too far. I think sometimes with Jack's scripts, they are so packed with action and with little flourishes that maybe on the page read as quite simple, but actually when you sort of dig into them and when you really start to think about what it's going to take to achieve it, they can actually be a lot more complicated than they look. So occasionally it will be a bartering. I'll say, I'll give you this, but we've got to take that away.
Yeah.
It's horse trading, basically. So I learned that from the first series producer I worked under on Strike Back. it's sort of, you give with one hand and take with the other, and you're constantly sort of trying to keep the equilibrium. But he, like I said, Jack is great at responding to, we've got this and this, and he will sort of sometimes write to order. And I think that's how we managed to pull off so much action in an episode.
Well, we obviously love Jack. He's been very kind with us and phenomenal. He does, I would say, maybe have a flair for the mischievous. And that comes through both in his writing and in person. He's delightful. But I am curious, because you said like 9 times out of 10 you can find a way to make it work. Was there something that like jumps out at you that he had this idea for, that you were like, it's absolutely never going to happen?
Well, I mean, we'll always investigate it. I mean, I think actually this season in, the Croatian season, we pretty much managed, he might, remind me of something, but we pretty much managed to pull most things off. I mean, the teetering truck in Ep 7 was a huge logistical and engineering piece. You've got 3 trucks, 2 cliffs, you've got a gutted truck, a truck that runs, you've got a truck that's safe to put cast in. At one point that did look possibly beyond our means, and so I had to a couple of times sort of try to prep him for maybe that wouldn't happen, and he sort of would just look at me and then I would leave, and obviously try to. But season 7 back in Malaysia, your season 6 in Malaysia, there was it was a great scene he wrote at the start of, I think it was episode 1, where we're sort of in a plane and it's plummeting towards Earth, and it's there's a guy in a mask and he's shot some people and then he's going to jump out. And some countries you'll go there and you can find bits of aviation equipment to use, but in Malaysia it was very tricky. We couldn't find a sort of inside of a plane, and the front of the plane I can't remember the name of, but so we looked into building it, and it was going to cost over $50,000 to build something that probably had a screen time of about probably less than a minute. So you start to think that's not viable, not if we want to spend money elsewhere, that we're really going to get bang for our buck. So I think that was the only time, where we had to rethink an entire sequence, basically, because we couldn't pull it off. But otherwise, the challenge, what's great about Strike Back is you've got so many great minds on it, and in the crew, from stunts to SFX to production design, and where there is a will, there is a way, most of the time.
Most of the time. Most of the time. Yeah. Many great minds. Obviously, I mean, you really have to be at the top of your game to pull this show off, and it's amazing how many people work on this show who are just brilliant. This is a question I've had since episode 1 of this season, because, and maybe it's just me, because I know this Scott and Stonebridge years so cold and so well. But as I'm going through these episodes, there are so many things that echo back to things that happened during the Scott and Stonebridge years, and especially, character deaths. And as we're going deeper into this season, I'm writing lines of dialogue where it's like, okay, that happened here, or they said something so similar here. And in my mind, it's Jack paying homage to the Scott and Stonebridge years and the series as a whole to kind of bring those little bits back. Am I just imagining that, or was that intentional?
I don't think you are. No, I think Jack he's got an amazing ability to hold so much at once in his head. And I didn't produce those shows, so I'm less familiar. I've watched them, obviously, but I'm less familiar. But I think like Scott and Paul, when they're doing the music, they've got these motifs that run through that, have come from earlier seasons that they will bring back at certain times. I think Jack's the same. I think he is, constantly aware of the big things that he's referencing and homaging. And then, of course, in just the sheer quantity of scripts that man has written in the last 3 years, there is, and, with the tropes that a show like Strike Back has, the genre of action, you do occasionally find yourself repeating beats, but it's always about trying to do it in a different way, or undercutting it, or just doing something surprising with it. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he is homaging back.
So do you think has been the most surprising lesson for you going from being the sort of like hands-on block producer to being the series producer this year?
I think you always learn from the things that don't go well. Me as a producer, that's, the lessons I've always taken away with me is those days on set that you sort of didn't see something coming, and how you managed to deal with that. And I think series producing this year was just actually, it was more about just the stamina of it, sort of. Whereas before I could dip in and out, and in between blocks I might try and, go away for a few days just to sort of decompress. It was basically being on from, January 4th or whenever we went back to November 2nd when we finally wrapped. And just the sheer relentlessness of constantly trying to be in the story and being able to give Jack hopefully helpful tidbits, but then making sure I was across production. And thankfully, you don't do it by yourself. I had an amazing production team, amazing line producer, a guy called Donovan Roberts Baxter, and of course all the HODs and the cast as well, who turn up and every day absolutely nail it. So it's my job was made easier by the fact, I think, that it was the third season and with a new team, and there was a shorthand in a lot of departments, and we could all sort of hit the ground running. But I think, like I say, it was just the level of the quantity of work. But it doesn't really feel like work, not when you're blowing stuff up and telling time. So I'm not complaining. It was a wonderful, wonderful time, and Croatia was a wonderful country to get to explore. And we saved the best for last, I think, with one of the locations that we managed to find for one of the big end sequences in Ep 10. And sometimes you have to get luck as well. Like I was pretty worried about the sort of week away in block 5 for episode 10. We sort of had like 7 days worth of work to do in 6 days, and it would need everybody to be on flying form and nothing to go wrong, and the weather to be with us as well. And do you know what? It all sort of worked out. I mean, the weather was brilliant. It was perfect, and not everything went to plan. We did have some vehicles break down, which is sort of inevitable on Strike Back. For some reason, I don't know. It just always happens. You manage to buy a vehicle, it looks good, and then it breaks down just when you need to shoot on it. But we all managed. Yeah, we managed to react, and Bill Eagles pulled off, I think, a pretty spectacular final block.
Yeah. So that I'm assuming you're talking about the boat chase scene, which both Warren and Dan have mentioned in there. Warren, of course, mentioning doing like the second unit, getting to be there and being a part of that, and being really glad that things are so chaotic that you guys let him do some things. And then Dan, of course, saying of all the things to sort of go out on, it was spectacular.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was great, actually. I really enjoyed working with Warren in that capacity, and I think it was hopefully helpful for him to see behind the scenes a little bit, see the work that goes into prepping a block, because it is tricky for the actors. They get the scripts late for these later blocks, and then they turn up on set, and we're asking them to do things that we've had weeks to come to terms with, and this is how it's going to be done, and they have to respond just sort of in the moment. And I think Warren, I think he hopefully enjoyed. And what always happens on the final block is I'm siphoning cameras off left, right, and centre. It's you've got a splinter unit of a splinter unit of a splinter unit shooting. I end up shooting some bits, and Warren shooting bits, and then we've got a second unit running and a main unit running up there with horses. And it is, we took over a town basically in Obravac in Croatia, and they must have been glad when we left, because we made a hell of a lot. But you have to sort of get it done, and we had to come out of that week with all the material. There was no going back, So, and that's the great thing. Everybody pulls together, and the boat chase, I think, is for me a sort of highlight, because sort of Bill said in his podcast, we tend to not ever be able to reach the heights of Bond, and we're not Bond. We don't have the $200 million that they have. But I think for the 2 days shooting that we did get out on the river, I think it's pretty. I think I'm very proud of that one.
Yeah, well, it is it's beautiful. It turned out really well.
I have to tell you, as you've been speaking, you've brought up all these different vehicles that were used in locations. And as I was watching these episodes, at one point I wrote in my notes, planes, trains, and automobiles. Because was there a form of vehicle in 8 through 10 that you didn't use? There's even just in 8, I'm like, okay, we have a tanker, we've got a train, we've got a helicopter, we've got, just the regular cars. Was this just him thinking, I'm going to dump as many vehicles I can explode into these last 3 episodes?
Pretty much. I think, the only thing, it doesn't have a donkey. That's about it. But I think the thing about Block 5 is it was sort of, there were all these things we wanted to do that were left over. And it was like, Jack had always wanted to do something with horses. I wanted to see if we could pull off skydiving. We'd done the train in Block 1. But vehicles, they're always a massive part of Strike Back. And it's interesting. They're always sort of quite a tricky thing logistically and production-wise, because each country has their own, when we went to Jordan, they don't really import cars. So, something that would cost you maybe £1,000 secondhand here in the UK will cost you £14,000 there. Now, for a show that likes to blow up cars, your vehicle budget is through the roof. So, but yeah, again, I come back to the fact that it was because of the great people in production and behind the camera that we managed to snaffle away enough cash for the final block that we could pull off, all of these things. In the skydiving scene, I never thought we would be able to do something like that on Strike Back, which was, and it's only for a little sort of flash, really. It's only for a couple of seconds, but it just gives a real scale, to the show, I think. So yeah, I think we did have pretty much most forms of transport. I mean, the other thing, I've had this thing with Strike Back where for my entire time I wanted to get a tank into the show, and we managed to do it on Block 1. But that particular storyline kind of got written out, and unfortunately we didn't end up using the material. So I had all these big armored trucks, and so that was disappointing that I never quite managed to get the tank.
There was that giant vehicle, whatever that was, that they drove through the wall in the beginning, but it's not quite a tank.
Yeah, the MRAP.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that was the military. That was down to the Croatian production company that we were working with, Embassy. They had a great relationship with the Croatian military, and they were able to provide us these fantastic vehicles. And in episode 7, you've got the helicopters at the start. Often, you have to work to the military's timescale, and so they don't always want to shoot the day you need to shoot or want to shoot. But it just gives such sort of epicness to the show, and it was definitely something I wanted to get back in this season, because we were unable to get the military on board in season 7 in Malaysia. So there was a sort of slight lack of militariness at times, just vehicle-wise. But yeah, I think we used most vehicles, that's for sure.
And the team overall had much nicer vehicles than they have in the past in this series, in this year. I was like, wow, it's not a crappy old car. They're driving around in these really nice looking SUVs.
The Section 20 vehicles always, you've got to sometimes fit all of them in it.
Yeah.
Hand off the camera, and so yeah, they often have to be sort of nice and flashy.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing.
I want to put in a bid for HBO to please just put out a DVD of all the deleted scenes, or all the stunts gone awry, that would just be so fun, because we hear so much about, well, we shot this, but it got and we're like, yeah.
I mean, it is definitely a show that I would always, in the back of my mind, I'd always love a script when it's 48 pages, because then you sort of know you're hovering around, not necessarily having to cut out entire scenes. You're hovering around being able to trim it, but still maintain everything. But in the writing, sometimes you need that extra fat there, because you need to be able to discover in the edit what works and what doesn't, and have that room to maneuver as well. So unfortunately, yes, there's always every season the odd little bit that sort of hits the floor.
Yeah, it happens. Well, thank you so much for spending so much time with us, and we always wrap with Deb's, as we call it, the Philip Winchester question. That especially, you as a series producer, God, I mean, it's not just 6 months of shooting. It's a whole thing for you of a slog, but it seems like even you look back on it with rose-colored glasses. So we would like to know your highs and your lows for the season.
Oh, for this season in Croatia, or just overall?
Overall.
Yeah, either.
Overall.
Yeah.
Gosh. Do you know what I mean? Quite often the bad days start bad, but they sort of, depending on how you react, they can become the good days as well. I mean, we've had, I remember season in Malaysia, we're shooting episode 2, and we've got a helicopter coming in. And often, I get to set early with Bill. It was a Bill Eagles episode. You get to set early so that you can check the set and make sure everything's there and it's going to turn up. And there's the big crate that Katrina has the fight on in episode 2, and had the warhead in it, and it's in the wrong place basically, which is not normally a problem. So we get a forklift, but I'm looking at this forklift and I'm looking at this crate and I'm thinking, I don't think that's going to work. But it rained overnight, and it often rained a lot in Malaysia actually. And this forklift goes about 10 meters and then gets stuck in the mud. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, okay, so the helicopter's going to be here in like 40 minutes. And now we've got a forklift in the way, in the middle of the set. And the crate is still in the wrong place. So maybe my blood pressure is going up a little bit at this point, and there's a lot of running around and shouting. I think in the end we had to get 2 Range Rovers to pull the forklift out of the way. And meanwhile, 35, 40 members of the crew managed to move a half-a-ton crate.
Oh my gosh.
Of the set. So that went from being a very bad day to a very good day in the space of sort of a couple of hours, because the helicopter then was about 10 minutes late anyway, and it came in because those things are expensive. The moment the rotors start turning, you're paying money. So yeah, I mean, there's a few times like that in Jordan as well. We're shooting with Trevor Eve in the morning in a scene with a Black Hawk, and those things are incredible. To be around, amazing bits of machinery. And it'd been a really good morning and it was beautiful sunshine. And then we moved sort of a couple of miles up the road to shoot in this gully where we're shooting the bit where Jane Lowry jumps out of the car before it flips with Novin and Reynolds. And we sort of passed through where we're having lunch, and there's this huge Bedouin tent and it's sort of billowing in the wind and it looks like it's going to take off. And so I call over Del, our health and safety, and I'm like, this, what's going on? This looks a bit dangerous. The wind has really picked up. And he said, oh, don't worry. It's fine. As long as it's not sort of blowing 40 miles an hour, we'll be all right. So I said, well, what's it blowing at, Del? And
39.
Well, he went and got his little wind machine and he looked at it and he said, oh, it's 40 miles an hour. I was like, right, okay. So then everybody starts to get very worried that we're not going to be able to shoot. So I rushed to the location where we're in this gully, and MJ is not very happy, wants to shoot. And I've got the local Jordanian fixer who's you can't shoot, you've got to call it off, you've got to pull it. And this is day 4 on the job for me. So I'm pretty stressed. And I think then he starts saying that there's going to be a flash flood. Because this particular area is famous for flash floods, and I was okay, right? Well, pulling an entire day's shoot is a pretty massive thing. So, half a day's shoot. So I just said, when will we know if there's going to be a flash flood? And he said, well, if it's raining in Akbar. I said, well, is it raining in Akbar? And he said, well, I don't know. I'll call someone. And I said, well, how long would it take for the rain to travel? And so we worked out that it would take sort of 20 minutes for the rain to travel. So I said, well, you need to call your friend every 10 minutes to see if it's raining. And until you tell me that it's raining, then I'll pull the shoot. But we managed to get through it and did the stunt. And the stunt was Ellie, who's Alin's stunt double, did an amazing stunt for us that day. So yeah, I remember returning to my hotel and I thought, oh God, if every day on Strike Back, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. But now I look back at that, and I think if I realised that Jordan, those 11 days in Jordan, kind of set me up, as able to go on. So I think for me, I've loved every day I've ever been on Strike Back. So, but there have been these moments that have obviously, always been challenging.
On me, back to the crib.
Hey Hey guys, welcome back. We are excited. You heard from our next guest all about last season, and so we had to have him come on because he was a fan favorite. Everybody, welcome Fraser MacDonald. Thank you for coming on again.
Hello again. How are you?
I'm doing good. The very blonde, not redheaded Fraser MacDonald.
Okay, all right. Okay, can I just? Oh no, I'm not that I've got anything against ginger people. It's just
You better not.
It's just a bland stereotype that Warren Brown likes to fling in every now and then. So I just as is one, and then I'll probably get a load of stupid accents get thrown at me now as well because they all try and do Scottish accents really badly. It's like being at a bad Scottish convention from Star Trek, you know. What to be fair, Warren's is probably the best. It's better than Jamie's, and it's much better than Dan's. But yeah, it was just a point of order.
No. Scottish accents are hard, and I will tell you, on this episode, on Jack's Facts, he has like a joke that he wrote. I don't even remember what the joke was, and it says, "Please say this in your best Scottish accent," and I was like, "What?" I don't know how to do that. It's terrible. It's really terrible. I tried like 3 times, and I sound terrible.
What's the joke? Oh, so, should you tell me?
I don't. Yeah, I can tell you that he said if any American audience gets this, you'll have my undying respect. Oh, so what he said? There's been a murder at Firhill. There's a murder at Firhill every fortnight, and I was like, "Yep, don't get it. That is not for me."
Okay, do you want me to explain it, or?
Oh, please,
No.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, Firhill's a football stadium in Glasgow, home to Partick Thistle, and they will play there every 2 weeks, which is a fortnight, obviously.
Okay.
So there's been a murder, so they lose every 2 weeks at home.
Okay. That's nice. All right,
That's
you.
the joke. It's a bit of a niche joke. There'll be only about 10,000 people that really get that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Oh, that seems like Jack. Well, I guess let me start off then by asking you, how crazy the experience of Strike Back and shooting Strike Back is. How crazy then are you to have come back for a second season?
Not that crazy. I think I would call it more of an adrenaline junkie. Would that make more sense?
Yeah.
I mean, no, it was a no-brainer really, because it's not just the craziness of the experience. As everybody talks about, it's the people that you go through it with that makes the journey that much better and the experience that much better. And to come back to the vast majority of the crew that I'd worked with in Malaysia, the foreign crew that I'd worked with in Malaysia were back in Croatia. It was kind of a no-brainer, really, for me when I got asked back, as I've sort of hinted at last. There was a couple of other jobs on the horizon, but to come back and do Strike Back was kind of you can't sit and film people in a kitchen for a wee while, just talking.
Those are the options in life.
No, absolutely. And also, I'd sort of bumped into Jack and Nuala before. I'd gone for a meeting with them before, and they'd sort of explained a rough outcome of what was going to happen, and obviously it being the last season. And it was a no-brainer. It was like, you have to be part of that. I couldn't just be part of 4 episodes. So the possibility of staying for a whole 10 episodes, which ended up happening, was great. And seeing the job right the way, 10 episodes right the way from the very beginning to the very end is something that I've never really had a chance to do.
Oh wow!
That was quite astounding, Because normally you'd come in and you do your 2 eps and you're away. So you're only there really if you're starting off right for the very beginning or right for the very end, or in the middle. So to be there see the whole story arc and the whole and journey of the series was great, and to be part of it. So yeah. So madness, possibly adrenaline, yet definitely, but definitely it was the lure of the show and of the people that make it. So and the cast as well, obviously, who make it. But definitely to be part of that, and Croatia as well, because I think Dan hinted on it. Like Croatia is just it's one of those countries that gets under your skin, and it's an amazing country. And it's only on my doorstep as well. It's only 2.5 hours away from me, and it's amazing. just never been there before.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, spend 7 months in that company, in the company of those people in that countryside, and doing the things that we were doing on Strike Back it's not a job, it's just a gift, really.
Gift with
Sounding
a
emotional.
paycheck.
I feel like you guys now talking about Warren. Yeah, so, yeah.
We've tried to set this up as a no-cry zone this week, and you've already violated that. I mean, come on, we were crying talking to Bidis. We have to stop
Oh my
crying.
God.
Well, I tried talking to Bed for the other reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was not one when we started crying and he's like, what? And we were like, it's probably not you. It's probably not you.
Yeah. I would stop him in these tracks. Yeah.
So what an opportunity to be there for the entire season. And as you said, that was a unique opportunity for you. So what did you learn over that season that sort of surprised you?
I mean, I definitely became much more confident in my action. I did a lot more fights this year, and also I worked a lot more now with my unit. I sort of had a unit that was constant. So the second unit, and I was with them for most of it. So, I say constant. We had we changed DOPs. We had a really good DOP to start, a British DOP called Andre Austin, who was with us at the start, and then he left in Block 3, and I managed to get a really, really good Croatian DOP called Mario Delash for the last two blocks, and he was fantastic. And I got a great AD, so called Tony O'Hearn, Mad Dog Tony, who I think Eileen is a big fan of, so she calls him Mad Dog Tony. So that was great. We had a really tight knit team for us this year, and it was something that we could. I talked about rolling with the punches last year, and it was definitely as we came up to Block 5 that everybody was up and running to speeds, and it was great. And they were just brilliant people. So what did I definitely learn? I definitely learned leaps and bounds. I mean, until you do the next job, you can't really know. But I know that I've come away with definitely a big bit of knowledge working on the show. You know, I mean, it's always the same but different, if that makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
But you walk in and there are certain sequences that you know you can do, but you want to do them differently. There's a few sequences that have been done this year that I'm very proud of. That there's one coming up, especially. I'm not going to mention, but it's something that I was very proud of, especially because I was ill the day I shot it.
Okay.
But there's a few little things that have happened in the series has definitely been highlights for me. Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great experience.
Well, you have to share those.
Oh. Well, I mean, there's a section in Block 1 in Episode 1 where, I mean, this is where it kind of hit home to me about Croatia. Was I was responsible for a lot of the drone camera work on Block 1, so we were chasing the train, which meant that the train started in a small town called Kinin, and it would travel 20 kilometers to an abandoned station in another town called Kristanji. Sorry to the Croatian friends. So that 20k. So there was I had to scout certain points along that 20k where we could fly a drone from to get all those shots, and that was coordination, because we did that train stuff over 2 days in the rain, in the thunder and lightning, which was quite mental. But what was I talking about? Yeah, what really hit home to me about Croatia, because the other thing that sort of like the underlying thing about Croatia is historically it's actually just had a conflict of its own, you know, in the last 25 years, the Balkan, the Yugoslav War. And a lot of the crew that my age, or even a little bit younger, actually fought in the war or definitely experienced it, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting, with the crew to go through this sort of their experiences of things, of the Balkans, of the war, of military, of action and stuff. But especially in Knin, because this town of Knin was where the fighting first broke out. and we actually had to hire a local goat herd to take us to the places where we could fly the drone from, because he knew the best vantage points, but also goats would wander into fields and disappear. He'd be blown up by
Oh,
ordnance.
wow. Oh, my gosh.
That I remember really hit home to me, that we were still sort of like an area of Croatia still has that remnant, that really not so distant remnant of what conflict, you know, and that's what we were dealing with at the same time. So it was quite interesting. That was for block one. So and that undercurrent sort of like I think it fed through, and I think it fed through. I know Jamie was quite affected by it, because we started reading up, me and him, about and watch about the Yugoslav war and the Yugoslav conflict, and it being the undercurrent of where Coltrane and the whole, because it's episode 8, so you find out why Zaev is like Zaev, and it comes from that conflict.
Yeah.
Again, one of the strengths of the show is you know, that we are able to connect and have empathy to the baddie, and
But it was really, really well done, I think, drawing that connection. So both Jamie and Jack, we talked a little bit about it, and how, like, you're sort of honoring that past while still remembering to be Strike Back. And I think that's like it was really nicely done, and that it was like touching, and you see this like sort of conflict within Coltrane, and I thought it was great. Although I still, in episode 8, when Zaev tells him, like, I forgive you, I was like, oh God, this is crazy.
I mean, the thing about Alex Sekera as well, he's such an amazing actor. Again, I mean, what is it with Alex? Actors called Alex that we have to get in. And, I mean, it's like, I mean, Alec is much like Alec Newman, has that undercurrent of just menace, you know, but then can smile, and it's like, you know, take your heart away almost.
Yeah.
And Alec was definitely one of those characters. You know, it's a hard one to play. As IF is the fine balance between being a madman or or an obsessive. And I think definitely Zaev, he travels that line really well, Alec, and he was a pleasure to work with, you know, and I thought he was great in this episode. They really sort of like almost darkly humorous as well, you know. I only shot him the once, you know, just those little moments that he kind of knows that he's got them, you know, even though he's tied up and stuck there, he's got them, you know, they're there. And if it wasn't for the fact that his believers, his followers followed him too much, then he would have won. So it's a really interesting piece of writing, you know, and the realization for Section 20, I think, as well, because there was a scene that we did in block episode 5 when they meet Spencer coming off a helicopter, which for me was quite an important scene, because it's what Jamie says is there's a lot of recalls to things, but foreshadowing as well. It's kind of in a Mobius strip where he talks about being a blunt instrument. Section 20 is the blunt instrument. When I remember reading that, I remember distinctly the description of Pavel. And by these Russian general as the blunt instrument. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was for me that line, because Jamie Coltrane heard that, so he knew that there was a recall about going rogue, being a blunt instrument, all that metaphor going in. I don't know whether it was intended, but that to me was the start of when you start to realise what's going on with the British government, or this rogue, Spencer going rogue and using Section 20 to be his blunt instrument.
Yeah. I hadn't... See, this is why we have you guys come on, because I had not made that connection, and I'm just sitting here going like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So episode 8 is insane. You know, when I watch the episodes the first time, I take a lot of notes, and I always like write sort of in kind of like big, like capital letters, things that sort of shock me, because, you know, they're like things I want to reference later, and my notes are like half a page of just like, holy shit, this happened. Oh my God, this happened. Oh my God, this happened. It is like mind it's the like biggest what the fuck episode I think we've ever had. So
Till the next one.
Yeah, right. So I am curious for you, when you are like getting the scripts and stuff, and as you're going through them and realizing what you're going to shoot, what for you was your biggest like, holy shit, I can't believe we're going to do that moment?
Well, Block 4 was always going to be a hard one to do for me. I mean, only because it was following Block 3, and you knew exactly what was happening. So we needed to either reconfigure or not redux, but just you knew you had to come out in a high with it. So for Jack I think the Ariana moment was quite a biggie. I remember when he told me that, he said, "What do you think?" And I went, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to go for it. I was like, okay. But yes, that was definitely, and because I think thinking that you're because this block was about redemption, really, isn't it? It's about the idea of reforming redemption and moving on, for want of a better term. It's not about revenge yet, I don't think. And it's about how our team, fill the gap, so to speak, move on. Who's the Bravo? And I think Jack handled that quite well. I really like the moments of stillness to begin with, and then especially on the raids as we start from the madness and the manicness of episode 6 at the end of episode 6, the sheer emotion that to sort of come in and be still, and then start a raid up, and as you pointed out, and then keep that going into episode 7. Introduce all these layers at the FBI or the CIA, and then Spencer, who Spencer is, Def IS. So we're killing off all our major baddies, but we're not, so to speak. We're just introduced the major baddie in Ariana, and set it up really nicely for what's hopefully going to be one of the biggest climaxes yet. Yeah.
So can you tell us what the major scenes are that you had in episode 8? Because it sounds like you had a lot of the reveal parts of the episode.
I did the end scene, revealing Ariana. So I suppose that's the big one.
Yeah.
She steps into the car and reveals that she's a Russian agent. I'm trying to remember. Quite a few things. Not so. I did little things here and there, but I mean, mainly I did quite a bit in episode 7, not 8. Episode 7, we did Zayef, a lot of Zayef and Lorik and Ariana, little scenes like that. So, but also working mainly as backup for the main unit as well in this one, because as you can imagine, the insurgent camp strike in episode 7 was a massive sequence that took days to shoot, especially with all those heavy machinery that we had. So that was quite a complex job to do. So it was all hands on deck for that. So we were a lot of augmenting with the main unit. As Bridges probably pointed out, that we only had the helicopter for one day, and then so we had quite a lot to do. Yeah. But it was great. That's what Strike Back is, It's you just run into full gunning all the time.
Yeah. So that reveal scene is so crazy, and I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about working with Ivana in that, because she's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
She is. I mean, and she starts to really start to get to know who she is coming up as well. I mean, what you think is not what you think you think. What you think.
It is, but we're not thinking correctly.
You're not thinking what you're thinking. There are things that you don't know. She is great. I mean, she is creation, but and she fell into that part great, and she's a bundle of joy to work with. Her and Maxim, who played Lorik, were great together, as well. Alec, when she played to Alec, she knows how to make you scared, so to speak. But in a nice way. Not and she just knows how to work the camera really well, and knew that part really, really well. You know, she had good questions and good answers for things as well. Yeah, and I mean, after coming off a Banshee, you know, and to do this, it's a real pleasure, a real joy to work with her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
And she's such a presence about her that, like, you just, as soon as she's on the screen, it's like eyes on her. You know, just something about, she's incredible.
Yeah, she knows how to work a camera really, really. It takes 50% of your job away from you because you know she just got really good camera technique, and she loves shooting a gun. It's a perfect job for her in a way. Yeah.
So, I have a question. So, you hear people talk about that. They know how to work the camera, right? So, as someone not in the industry, I'm like, she doesn't know, like, where it is. Can you explain what you mean when you use that? Or is it sort of like that I know it when I see it? Or is there like a technical aspect to it?
It's a kind of a know it when you see it. It knows it. The best way to describe it, I suppose, the lens, you know, the idea that television exaggerates, or the lens exaggerates things. So this is one of the many facets of working a camera. But the lens can exaggerate things, so an arm movement or an eye movement can seem arch or overbearing or that. So knowing what works and what doesn't work, how you control your face or your body, etc., to the camera, and what lens works when and where, depending on what lens, wide angle lens. But it's an actor or an actress knows how to manipulate that, and knows what works where, and you know how to control their body in such a way. So a little movement, like an arch of an eyebrow, may be the only thing that gets picked up by the camera, because the rest of the face is still. So you know, whereas if you're moving too much, you can lose all the emotion and stuff. So something that knows how to what works well on camera, so how to work a camera.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, there's a classic for me. The classic scene. I'm going on well off piste. We got a classic scene in Goodfellas. When Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci all go back to Joe Pesci's, who's meant to be Joe Pesci's, Martin Scorsese's mother.
Yeah.
And they go around the dinner table, and they've just killed Billy Schmartz. He's in the back of the car, and she wakes up and gives them breakfast. Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci's talking. It's Joe Pesci's scene, and Joe Pesci's talking about his mum, and she brings out this pen. Robert De Niro picks up a ketchup bottle, and instead of slapping it on the back like that, does that. He rolls it in his hands. Now, partly I would like to think that that's because he didn't want that noise going over Joe Pesci's dialogue. But all I can do during that scene is watch Robert De Niro rolling a ketchup bottle and not look at Joe Pesci. And that's knowing how to work the camera.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And I think that probably describes so we just called, I don't know if you ever listened to our things about Warrior. And Joe Taslim's character, he's phenomenal, and he's not a huge character, but he walks in the room, and you cannot help but look at him. Part of it's because he's insanely attractive, but the way he moves is like amazing. And I think Kieran Bew, we talked to him, and he was like, he walks in, and you're like, that's what magnetism is, or something. But I think what you're saying it gives me like a lens to look at it and go, I think that's a lot of what that is that like knowing. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you think of all the classic sort of like Western heroes as well, people like Lee Van Cleef and, you know, James Coburn, all these guys, they did very little. Even Clint Eastwood does very little. You know, when you watch his performance, there's very little going on. But when something happens, it happens, and everybody notices. Right. Yeah.
Well, I spent years working as a stage manager, and you see that in the theater that, you know, you spend all day, every day with these actors, and there are just a tiny handful of them that the second those lights go on, it's like they're a completely different person. And, you know, it's that difference that whatever it is, they've got it, and you just can't stop looking at them. And in fact, I work with a woman who is a dancer, and, you know, every day you're just like, oh, that's just Gina, whatever. And the second those lights hit her on stage, you're like, holy what? I mean, it's like she's a completely different person, and you're just like, oh my God. And that's how, Ivana is on screen, like, whoa, you just can't stop looking at her. But completely different topic here. I'm wondering if there are parts of scenes or scenes that you filmed that you were excited about that got cut, because we keep hearing about all these really cool things that never made it to the episode. So what do you have to tell us?
Oh God. No, luckily, most of the stuff I've done has been in it, if not a little bit truncated. The trouble is so much went on. I mean, I think there's something coming up in episode 10 that has been cut, that I know has been cut, that was shot, that did get cut. And I don't know if Jack will talk about it, but maybe it's something to talk about later. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a couple of things that no, quite a bit of it's still in actually. I mean, it may have been cut differently just for time, but that's only to do with time and stuff. No, most of it's still in actually. As much as I think. I mean, we did quite a lot. It's hard to remember.
Yeah. It is a jam-packed season, that is for sure.
I did say there was a lot of action this year.
Yeah. Like, but you keep thinking, what else can they do? Okay, here you go. Here's what else we can do.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, you did say where will the emotion come from? But it's really interesting, isn't it? It's so much. It's like this double the amount of everything at the moment.
Yeah. It is almost unbelievable the way that you guys have managed to do that. You have these incredible. Yeah, I mean, the action is so ramped up, but the emotion, I mean, my God, like episode 5 and 6 don't cry, Jesus Christ.
But 7 and 8 have had that, not necessarily as in your face, but you're really hurting along with them, and the littlest things, like a couple lines from Chetri where she just breaks referring to Bravo 1, or that's what this show does so well, is that people think it's just bombs and bullets, but it's those tiny little quiet moments that just kill you.
Yeah, and also going back to episodes 3 and 4 with Katrina Yasmin coming back, the fragility of Yasmin, or Katrina's part, sorry, not Yasmin, the fragility of Katrina, seeing what she's had to go through and what she's trying to get back to where she was, the way she deals with 20. So right. I think it's quite nice. It's been quite an overarching series, but very microscopic in its moments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It is. It definitely, and I think we've said it. It feels like somebody let Jack off his leash. It being the series, and he just put his whole heart into it, and it's both like yay and like you're gonna give us this, and then we're gonna be done. Like what? You just raise the bar, and then you're like, see ya.
See you later. And I'm glad you talked about how so much of it references things that have happened before in Strike Back, because my notes are full of that. Like, oh, they said that in Shadow Warfare, or oh, this happened there. That he has, like, throughout the entire thing, paid homage and paid respect to the episodes and the seasons that came before, and which I have just loved. Absolutely.
And I don't pick up on at all.
The Easter eggs that we try and put in every now and then, I tried to do a couple, but it stopped after two blocks. But unfortunately, so I did that. Well, you picked up on it. I did when I did the kitchen fight with Novin in episode 1. You picked up on the Nikita reference.
Yeah, I think Deb mentioned it. Yeah. Nikita,
you said.
Now I've forgotten what.
It feels like it's been forever ago.
Well, there was a kitchen fight in Venice with Novan and Chiga, and then you said it was just like Nikita.
Nikita, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, which is purely intentional. Yes, it was.
Yay!
That's awesome.
Yay me!
Yeah, and then because I thought I sort of jokingly said to Jack and some of the directors that I said I'm going to try and get some references to this genre of filmmaking called cinema de look. I don't know if it's a French from films from the 80s, so it was like Luc Besson, Jean-Jacques Denis, Louis Carax, and I managed to do it in the first 2 blocks, but then I couldn't do it again. But I managed to get Nikita, and I managed to get a wee nod to a film called Diva as well, which is with the scooter chase.
Okay, I'm writing that down. I see Deb's I see her hand reach over. I'm like, yeah, okay. Off season Diva.
I loved Nikita.
Yeah.
That was, I remember seeing it on late at night on HBO or something, and I was just like, oh man, is this awesome?
Yeah, I know, it's a great film.
No one ever gets anybody else seen this.
You can't do a kitchen fight with Novan and not reference Nikita, you know.
Right. Yeah, especially when she was crouched at the end of the work. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, happy. He's like, yeah, you got it.
That was the shot. Yeah. The pasta. Yeah. That was my first scene I shot on Strike Back. That scene, and that's where the classic line, I think, "Can I squib an onion?" came from Adam Howe. Our special effects supervisor. He asked if it would be okay if he put some gun squibs in an onion. Of course, Adam. Of course.
You squib whatever you want.
Go for it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay.
I'm crying. I'm just squibbing onions.
Yeah. Can I squib an onion? Yeah. So, and that was the running joke. That became a running joke throughout the series, actually, with poor Adam. Yeah.
Guys do really love blowing up vegetable stands, though. You have to.
Well, that's fantastic. Oh, and thank you so much again for coming back and chatting with us and everything. We love it. And like I said, everybody loved your, hearing from you last time, so we were excited to get to do it again. And as you know, we finish with our final question, which is Deb's Philip Winchester question. Yeah. You've gone through the shit. You've got your rose-colored glasses on. Give us your highs and lows.
High was just Croatia in general. Croatia's just the people, my crew, Mario, Delic, Zoe, Lana, Luca, Tony, all those guys, Ivan. I would mention them all, but I haven't got enough time. They're all great. Spending that amount of time with them, brilliant. And then, I ended up being the only native English speaker in the crew after a while.
Okay.
And Zagreb. I mean, Zagreb is just such an amazing city, and they took me, and Zagreb took my heart. So yeah, it's great. Lows. I mean, Bidis nearly made me cry when I listened to when he talked about his low about. I mean, I wasn't there I'd gone early. I'd left on the Saturday rather than going to the pub with them lot. But the fact that he said once it all finished and everybody started leaving, he got a wee bit sad about that. And that's sort of and that's one of the reasons I wanted to leave before everybody else. But that was big. Thinking that you'll hopefully see these people again, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. I mean, in Malaysia, we kind of had a feeling that we might all get together again. This time, we're not too sure. Might be a Strike Back reunion. I don't know. That was pretty hard. Another one is as well. That's about. I'd say that's the biggest one. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll still keep in touch with a lot of them. We still WhatsApp each other and message each other. Getting to work with each other again. Hopefully, if I got a chance, I'd hire everyone that I work with. On Strike Back because they're all great.
Thanks, and tune in next week for another Need to Know session at the Crib. Follow us on Twitter @StrikeBackCrib. Out.